Can we all see that first screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which is currently going through its committee stage in the House of Lords, there's sort of 3 stages for any bill before it becomes an Act of Parliament. Once it goes through and gets chewed over in the House of Commons, it goes through, gets chewed over in the House of Lords, and it goes back to the House of Commons for finishing off. Sadly, or effectively, the Lords can make all sorts of good suggestions about it, but the Commons don't have to accept them, and the Commons' final word is final. And that is something that was settled, several years ago. But what it means is that if there are things that we want to include in the discussions about at the committee stage of the House of Lords, and the National Association of Local Councils has got some connections in there, that's one option that we might do. But the thing is, what the current plan for the bill is saying, it doesn't say very much about town and parish councils at all. So we'll see about that. So just a quick run through what we've got in there. Okay, have we got the second page all right?
Yes.
Okay, so English aviation plans. This is something that's come off the web. They aim to shift power to new strategic authorities, each with a mayor, powers over planning, transport, and economic growth. And the interesting, introducing neighbourhood governments for community input. Okay, this is the bit where we're concerned about. And moving towards unitary councils to streamline services. So there seems to be a suggestion that actually, if we're going to unitary service councils, changing local government, that there needs to be separate neighbourhood governments than currently exists. So somebody, and more than one person, presumably in government and civil service collectively, have decided that. And I don't know exactly how or why they've done it, but that's what they've done. So officially speaking, the government has said, we'll deliver on the government's commitments to widen and deepen devolution across England. Okay. Support the government's plan to rebuild and reform local government. Okay. And here we are, give communities stronger tools to shape their local areas. Now, parish and town councils are pretty useful tools, or can be already. So there's another straw in the wind here. They're sort of trying to bypass the existing situation. All right, there aren't town and parish councils in many urban areas. But somebody along the line, some people have decided that to go and approach things in a different way. So there's a link there to what the government says about that. You don't need to write all these down, ladies and gentlemen. This will be made available after the meeting, so with all these links, you'll be able to pursue them at your leisure. The Local Government Association is something that sits in between local government and central government. It gets some funding from central government, if we're not aware of it. It's mostly about districts and county councils, and it's run very much on lines that reflect the political makeup of the nation. It doesn't seem to do very much with town and parish councils either. Both NALC and SLCC, national bodies, are connected to it. But when the Local Government Association talks about local authorities, they do not mean parish and town councils. They mean districts and counties and unitaries. So what they've gone down there. So the Local Government Association has done a briefing on all this stuff, and it says, it's in danger of not delivering on its ambition for how strategic authorities will work with councils. When it says councils, it means districts and counties. It doesn't mean parishes. We must ensure the model is not narrowly focused on mayors alone. Absolutely right. Success relies on councils, communities, and public service working together in partnership. Fine. So that's all good. It's all straightforward. The devil, of course, is going to be in the detail, but at least the Local Government Association, frankly, as the government, sort of saying nice things on the top. Here's a gentleman. This is the current Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, but he's also managing this. He's in charge of this particular piece of legislation. So the key bit within the draft bill is this one, clause 60. And this is where this thing about neighbourhood area comes in. Any area of specified description that falls in the authority's area, a neighbourhood area. So they're developing a new kind of area. We're not talking about council areas. We're not talking about parishes. We're talking about a neighbourhood area. Someone's decided that that's what they want to have. In terms of having neighbourhood area committees, which is the way this thinking from government is currently going, they are being piloted in a couple of places in the UK already, particularly in Surrey. So this is not something that is coming completely out of nowhere. It's been an idea for a while, and it is being tested out in a couple of places and having neighbourhood area committees. And these are not necessarily, as we'll discover, closely connected with town and parish councils. There's going to be regulations about how neighbourhood areas are managed. This is new fabulous neighbourhood government that's coming forward. We haven't got any drafts yet. So local authorities, which will probably be the unitary authorities, they've got to have organisational structures for governance of neighbourhood areas. They've got to have things about how to ensure the effective governance of neighbourhood areas, ensuring local engagement with neighbourhood areas. So somewhere along the line, they've got a pretty good idea that neighbourhood areas is what they want in order to link in with the new local devolution. So there's no mention at all here of parish and town councils. Well, there's a non-mention because they're talking about local authorities, and they talk about counties, districts, borough councils. They do not mean parish councils. So there's a dichotomy in the way government treats parish and town councils. Sometimes we're considered local authorities, and sometimes we're not. And on this occasion, for this clauses, we're not. We're saying we're not a local authority, we're somebody else. So that's a slight sort of effective sort of bypass of what parish and town councils are at. Each area that's having to look at new devolution is having to respond to this in different ways, obviously having to reply to government, saying what they've got in mind, what they'll be doing. And so we've got some information back from what's happening in Norfolk. Norfolk County Council is suggesting that they have a single unitary for the whole of Norfolk, and that to be part of the new strategic authority, which would be combining Norfolk and Suffolk. And they're saying they affect a neighbourhood, they mean areas comprising between 30,000 and 50,000 people, based on the natural geography of community life. Hurrah. This is, to suddenly have a new organisation, a new structure, in addition to the unitary authorities and excluding parish and town councils for 30,000, 50,000 people, that's the kind of thing that might be happening. That's the sort of debate that's happening at the moment. A county council in Norfolk have a committee for each of the 20 neighbourhood areas within Norfolk, including representatives from parish councils, representatives, police, child, all these different things. So huge potential membership of these committees. So these are early days, but when you're trying to think of how to get all those people together, some of us have already tried to get all these people together in meetings at different occasions. Not always easy. And to get these people together on a regular basis to make decisions and all the rest of it. So again, it'll be interesting to see how the various pilots in Surrey and other places are going on. But this is certainly what they're talking about from Norfolk County Council's point of view. There will be different views about the country. Some of us here may be from areas where they're looking at devolution actively, and you may have some particular examples and ideas to fit in. But this is just a simple one from Norfolk. So this is the implication of people saying, right, thank you very much, town and parish councils, but we want to have a separate way of doing this. What does Bill say? Does it mention parish councils at all? Well, it does. It does in terms of community assets, lands of community value, in terms of parish councils trying to recognise that things are of community value. We get mentioned there. Preferred community buyer, nominating community group, it can be the parish council, so we get mentioned there, because there's lots of other practical things in this bill, not just about how districts and counties and unitaries operate under strategic authorities. And in this section, a councillor means we can be a parish council. So one part of the bill is saying parishes are being excluded as local authorities, another part they're being included. So that's classic, isn't it? That just shows how things are being looked at variously by people in authority. Okay. So National Association of Local Councils, NALC, has been successfully lobbying peers in the House of Lords to make comment on this draft bill, and Baroness Taylor of Stevenage, who's within the Housing, Community and Local Government Department, is the responsible person for the government in the House of Lords. And there are lots of questions from peers on the 8th of December, and she said a number of things in reply. This is all going to be in the notes you're going to get. Here we go. The government value the role that town and councils play. Thank you. There are no plans to abolish parish council or to change their powers. That's interesting, because they're not talking about giving us extra powers, but they're not talking about taking away our powers either. We can actually do quite a lot of things already. So that's interesting to be said. And this is the government speaking to us through Baroness Taylor. Our plans for neighbourhood engagement are about hardwiring communication into local authorities. And we're going to make sure that the unitaries are connected to their communities and in the ways that you've seen an example from Norfolk. Okay, so the devil is clearly going to be in the detail, and we haven't got any into those details yet. One of the questions is if there's going to be regulations about this, but do we want to find ways of saying things before we get to that stage, so we get some ideas established. Parish councils will be an important part and can create a stronger, more responsive neighbourhood governments. Okay, well, that's nice to know as well. It'd be nice to see that hardwired into something somewhere. So Baroness Taylor's acknowledging parish councils, fair enough. And then it is a local authority to determine where the new parish councils are needed, because we can have some new parish councils, particularly in urban areas. Again, here we are, local authorities determine the new parish and town. So that local authorities are quite often, when people say that, even though lawfully town and parish councils are local authorities, quite often people just mean districts, counties, and unitaries when they use that language. So that's what Baroness Taylor has said. So it's not an open door, it's not a closed door either. Interesting to hear what she said. So we've had some thoughts already about this. Different people have been feeding in ideas about it. There are lots of existing council powers that we can use as town and parish councils. One of them is Section 101 of the good old 1972 Local Government Act, which allows local authorities to help each other. And we're very much included town and parish councils in that. And so if there's something that's a statutory responsibility of a unitary, of a district, of a county, of a borough, parish councils have a legal potential for helping them with it. Obviously, you do it with their consent, you speak with them about it. But we can already do a whole pile of things that other councils can do, provided if we want to do it, if we want to get engaged. So that's interesting. We've heard Baroness Taylor saying that's not going to change. So that will still be there. Parish councils are often known as community building. So this is about bigging up parish councils. There are things that we do, and we have skills and abilities to make plan for these assets. This is something that we bring to local government, we can bring to the party, if you like, in terms of neighbourhood governments under devolution. In a number of places where the borough councils have disappeared, Taunton in particular, Taunton Deane Borough Council disappeared, and the next day Taunton Town Council appeared. So places which haven't been parish, which are becoming parts of unitary authorities, as in Somerset, are looking at how they might do these things. And Cheltenham is another case in point. Cheltenham Borough Council will be disappearing one way or another, and they're already looking at creating a new parish in the areas of Cheltenham that are currently not parished. Manchester has already had some of this experience. There's a potential loss of community identity if we don't have these extra parishes where they're in unparished areas. Devolution, which puts government and decisions further away from people. So having new parishes, they tend to be called community councils when they're new, would be fine. Large opportunity to increase the role of neighbourhood planning. We've had bits of thinking about neighbourhood planning recently, and the government's reduced funding for people presenting neighbourhood plans. But neighbourhood planning tends to be happening at parish and town council level. Again, nobody's suggesting that that's going to change. So there are things that towns and parish councils are already doing, will already be doing. And so to keep in touch, you can imagine a neighbourhood area committee for 30 to 50,000 people, trying to get them to produce a neighbourhood plan. It's not really going to work, is it? Because you're talking about a whole host of different communities and areas underneath those so-called neighbourhood areas. So neighbourhood planning is a very interesting point about how we might say town and parish councils need to be part of this whole scheme of things, not least because of neighbourhood planning. And a further comment is there must be a huge amount of information about how neighbourhood plans have been developed so far, in terms of what's worked well, what size of area they were been using at, and this can show the practical sides of community planning at the local level. So, you think neighbourhood area committees are going to be doing this neighbourhood planning and actually effectively working out what's happening at local level? This suggestion is saying, no, that's not likely to happen. We need to think much more about the neighbourhood planning card for town and parish councils being played more heavily. So that's a very interesting point there. Okay, having more parish councils, clearly there is an existing lawful procedure, community governance, a governance review, whereby if we want to have a new parish council, we can do that. particularly in urban areas, is very useful. As I mentioned, Taunton, mentioned Cheltenham, there's other places in London. The Queen's Park Community Council in London was created in 2014, and that was the first new parish in London for several centuries, I think. But there are ways in which we can do it. At the moment, there is a veto at the district authority level to whether to allow it or not, but there is a process. And there's lots of things happening around the country about this, so that's something to be aware of. The power of competence, we've talked a little bit briefly about powers. A lot of things are available if a parish has got the power of competence. In other words, if it's got a trained clerk and 2/3 of the councillors are elected. But there may be other ways of doing it, and there is efforts being made through NALC and other bodies to try and extend the power of competence to everybody, whether they've got these qualifications or not. This is suggesting there's still a light whether that might be a way of getting enough qualification at clerk level to get the power of competence. And certainly when you're doing things with community energy projects, we can help and support community energy projects as town and parish councils. We can't necessarily lead on them. And the power of competence would allow us to get much more involved in that. And one of the great things about these community energy projects is it can bring in money to the community for local projects and the things that are happening locally. And that's going to be more and more important, I think, as time and a half goes by. At the moment, town and parish council budgets are not capped by government. We can ask for whatever we like in terms of parish precepts. But as time and a half goes forward and money gets tight generally, having other sources of income in our local community can be worthwhile. Interestingly, the current bill actually gives the power of competence to strategic authorities, so they don't have to have qualifications or stuff. They're going to get it. So it's slightly worrying if they could be telling us what to do when we know differently. So that's an interesting point with the power of competence. Just to finish, there's some summary ideas, and some of us will have some other ideas to share in a minute, I'm sure. So the national bodies, NALC and National Association of Local Councils, Society of Local Council Clerks, were monitoring the passage of the bill. NALC has noticed we're working with peers at the current amendments of the current stage. There are things about standards, remote meetings, neighbour governments and funding, which are things that have been on the agenda for a while. We want to be able to have hybrid meetings as town and parish councils so that people who are housebound can come in and take part, as well as people who are able-bodied and come to the actual meeting. That's one of the things. There are things about discipline of parish councillors. If a councillor is somewhat out of order, there can be a process whereby they are suspended for 6 months. That's just something they have in Wales, we don't have in England at the moment. Suggestion from NALC about the devolution is that we've got county associations of town and parish councils. And in terms of linking through to town and parish councils, in terms of neighbourhood governments, if we like, county associations of town and parish councils may be ideal bodies to liaise with the new unitary authorities. So that could be another part of the structure going forward. Why do we have to have these complicated neighbourhood area committees when we have got county associations of town and parish councils? The other bit of news is that the national conference from SLCC in October, a civil servant came along from the right government department, said a number of things. Couldn't specify anything, but what she did say straight out, there's going to be no direct funding from government for town and parish councils. We sort of knew and suspected this anyway, but that was a very definite statement, the one definite statement that the lady made. So that avenue is closed. If we're going to have more responsibilities, if we're going to be doing things, if we're going to carry out our existing roles, we maybe need to be thinking about sources of funding. Yes, we can raise our parish precepts. Yes, we could get money perhaps from planning gain. Yes, we can get things for community energy projects. That's likely to be coming down the road towards us in a bit more detail, and not everybody's going to be keen to get involved in that. So here's a quick picture of East Anglia. So we've had some feedback from Norfolk already. The great collaboration has been carrying out early work within Cambridgeshire, Essex, Norfolk and Suffolk. We sent out a survey form of what things were happening in their local area, particularly in relation to things to do with climate change and nature recovery. And you can see down the left-hand side all the different boxes that people could have ticked, and you can see on the right how these things appeared. And Graham, who's here, has been heavily involved in developing that, and so we can now see those things there. The government's white paper suggested that matters relating to climate change will be held at strategic authority level, in other words, right at the top of the new tree. Those sorts of decisions would be taken. Meanwhile, of course, the work happens at the local level, and it already is happening in many different ways. So that, in terms of devolution and local government changes, how the climate change action and process is managed is actually an important part of the whole mix. It's not the whole story, but it's certainly what we talk about a lot in the Great Collaboration, and something needs to be done. So there's that mapping, which we've just started going. We actually had a meeting yesterday with Norfolk Wildlife Trust, and they've got a local nature recovery strategy map, which has got huge amounts of detail about different wildlife habitats, different areas, and so forth to log into. But what they haven't really got space for is where are the projects, where are the community projects, where are the voluntary groups happening on the ground. And we're looking to expand this map to include those voluntary groups as well. So we're looking at a time whereby people can get into a map like this and find out where their local groups are, find out either to join or to get good practice from. And we're getting a lot of that from town and parish councils. We can get it from community groups as well. So there's some practical stuff already happening on this particular agenda in terms of getting people to work together. Okay. David, who's here with us today, raised this point as well. Another straw in the wind about the government's view of town and parish councils. There's a neighbourhood board set up under the government's Pride in Place programme, but the latest government says you can't be, if you're a parish council, you can't be the chair of the neighbourhood board. Why have they said that? You know, what's that all about? Then once they've got the programme going, maybe that can go over to a parish council afterwards. But again, another straw in the wind. Our government somehow doesn't seem to care for parish and town councils in the way that they should. So it's a bit curious. And thank you, David, for raising that one. Amy Burnett, here we go. It's a nice piece of it's a photograph that Amy took, a nice piece of public graffiti there. You can talk us about a bit that in a moment, but the paper that Amy and two colleagues produced, Devolution, the Need to Empower Town and Parish Councils. This was published in December at Birmingham University. Amy's spoken to one of our sessions in the past. Town and parish councils are essential, place-based, locally driven institutions, absolutely. And also ready-made governance structures, bridging local and strategic goals, absolutely. We're the nearest local government to the public. We're not entirely stupid. We can actually manage to do different things and to link in with other organisations, provided it's properly arranged. Complex situation to do more with less. In other words, a lot of cooperative town and parish councils are volunteers. So how that operates on the ground, yes, we've been looking at a lot of it in the world of climate, but that is an issue. There is a link there included to the whole report. And this is some of the recommendations from the report. So unitary strategic authorities should generally support local layer of government, absolutely. Capacity building of town and parish councils, because as we know, the smallest parish council has only got 5 councillors and probably a part-time clerk. If there's going to be more weight, if we're going to be more closely connected into this government devolution, then capacity building is going to be a concern, an issue. What about innovation? We've got some ideas. We should be having peer-to-peer support networks. Okay, Collaboration is already helping with that, but that's a very good point to be making. Let's not all try and do it all from scratch to start with. Let's share, let's have some ideas together. Let's get some good practice going between ourselves. Suggestion that technology pathways, including AI, might help. AI is a bit controversial, artificial intelligence at the moment, but that's one suggestion from the report that could help with town and parish councils' capacity. Okay, that's a suggestion. And finally, we've got standing orders for town and parish councils. They're regular ones that we're all supposed to follow. And it may be that in terms of this neighbourhood area idea, in terms of getting more clarity with involvement of committees, that there might be something else that's put in model standing orders about this. At the moment, we can already have subcommittees or working parties from various town councils that involve the communities. That's not necessarily spelt out in current model standing orders, but there's ways in which they could be operated. So what we're saying is, yes, there are things that should be happening here. Yes, there's a role for town and parish councils. Yes, it needs carefully thinking about it, and it will need some support. So this is my last slide. Well, thousands cheer. What do we think? We're going to open the discussion now. So what about if there's strategic decisions at strategic authority level, local plans, other policies at unitary authority level, neighbourhood plans, practical project delivery at town and parish council level. That seems to make a bit of sense. That's only my suggestion. See what everybody thinks. There are threads that join us. So at least if there's a strategic alignment of local government bodies, town and parish councils are local government bodies, something like that would clarify that. They're talking about coordination of public funded and community effort. Yes, town and parish councils are actually particularly well placed to have a role in that. And appropriate skills and capacity at each level. So we don't have everybody at strategic level doesn't need to know all the details about how to set up a community energy project. And people at the town and parish council level don't need to know about how to set, strategic authority budgets. In terms of capacity building, in terms of training, in terms of skills, having different roles at different levels seems to make a lot of sense in that in terms of learning and training. And finally, whatever it is we can talk about today or agree subsequently, and obviously work with NALC and SLCC as well, how are we going to get the message through to government? Right, I'm going to stop sharing because I think you've heard enough from me. That's half an hour, that's plenty. I'll have a look at the chat. Graham, if you wanted to take over the chair again.
I was just going to make a simple point about numbers, which I think is integral to this. So every parish council that I've been on has had a planning committee which takes a look at planning applications, and it takes a major amount of time. It's highly controversial. It absolutely depends upon local knowledge, and it's all run by volunteers. And we're doing that in villages from 500 to 3,000 people. How on earth are they going to manage with an organization with 50,000 people? Boggles the mind, frankly. I think it's entirely impractical to suggest that you could do what is done at the moment by parish councils in a neighbourhood area organisation, whatever that's going to be called. So that's my 10 pence worth.
Yeah. And I think we're not talking about losing town and parish councils, but how do we actually link into all of this? Because clearly in the current bill and potentially in the neighbourhood area regulations, we're not getting a big mention. Dan, you've got your hand up, mate.
Yeah, hi. No, thanks for an interesting session. I sort of agree with lots of what you said about the sort of lack of clarity about how this new structure would relate to kind of parish and town councils. I just wanted to reflect some of my experience. I sort of used to work in Bristol City Council, and there they had a kind of neighbourhood forum set up basically across the city, and it worked quite well. And it is sort of set up with neighbourhood planning institutions, and sort of when you had significant development schemes, you would have pre-application engagement with those communities ahead of a scheme coming in. And so I sort of think it sort of potentially, accept the point about kind of the amount of people within one of these neighbourhoods, totally agree with that. But I think potentially it might make up for a bit of a democratic deficit and offer an opportunity for that sort of better engagement. Now, I don't think that really aligns with the changes in the NPPF, but nevertheless, the opportunity is there.
Right. That's the National Planning Policy Framework, yeah. I think it may be that as we get into this, as we go forward, that we have a role for town and parish councils. We might find there is a role for a larger neighbour area committee, but not trying, as you say, trying to do everything. And so that's a thought. Maybe if we're going to get these neighbourhood area approaches anyway, which apparently now seem to think that if this bill may become an act of parliament by Easter, then actually we may be thinking about not just what we do as town and parish councils, but what neighbourhood area does, and how that all connects together. But certainly at the moment, from what we're seeing, there doesn't seem to be a lot of thinking going on about that. Alex, please. Alex from Hertford.
Hello, I'm in an area, East Herts, with 5 market towns, and it seems to me we're fully parished, and it seems to me the big selling point is about placemaking and the sense of identity that I can't see them appreciating when it's sitting at a higher level, and it links into that agenda the government has about pride of place, and I imagine it's about increasing footfall in the economy and GDP in terms of people going to shops. And I suppose that our strongest argument is finding ways of linking into their agenda on growth.
Yeah, and the economic thing is interesting because it is mentioned in the bill and the guidance notes as well. Obviously, government needs tax revenue, it needs VAT income, it needs all kinds of things happening, in other words, to pay for the things that it needs to. At the same time, in terms of local employment, local activity, what makes sense at a very much local area, that's interesting. When we can't all suddenly be the host of a new sort of ICI or national supermarket or everything. But in terms of what happens locally, again, economic development at the local level is quite patchy at the moment because it's not a statutory requirement on district councils. When unitary councils come involved, whether they'll do some more about it or not. And of course, it's something that town and parish councils not necessarily done a great deal with. But what you're saying is that we need to be perhaps alert to that and see where we might make some connections into that growth agenda. And certainly the other thing about it, of course, is people trying to build houses on our green fields. So there's another thing.
But people want to live in vibrant places. And
yes.
I mean, like we talk about in my town council about the spirit of Hertford, and we've done quite a lot of work on strategies of sustainable tourism. So we've probably gone beyond what we have to do. But I mean, but it's being ambitious, I guess, about what we can do, and that will be very special and unique that these unitary authorities won't be able to do because they're not going to have the connections at local level.
Yeah. So we're beginning to think already about, in effect, an expanded role for town and parish councils, not just acknowledging us for what we are, that we could be doing more. And then this is where the capacity building that Amy and colleagues have mentioned come in.
And I think emphasising the uniqueness, because what we don't want, I mean, we're on the edge of London, but everyone says, oh, we don't want to live in a dormitory town. You know, the new people that will be added don't want to live in a dormitory town. The people already live there don't want to live in a dormitory town. We want to continue to celebrate and make each town different and somewhere unique to live. I have got another point to make. Which so I get really frustrated. So when the transfer, if assets are transferred, it really frustrates me, the idea that town and parish councils would have to pay above, say, a valuation price for an asset when it's being transferred between one public body to another public body. And I don't know whether it's possible to make a strong point about that, but it seems to me you're asking taxpayers to pay twice for an asset they've already paid for. I hope you understand where I'm coming from, but I really feel very strongly about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that needs to be recognized. I mean, there's been a little bit in there about community right to buy, but the question is, should we really have to buy it? Yeah, right. Thanks for that. Alex, David, you've got your hand up. David Morgan Jones, sorry.
Andrew, hi. Just some sort of thoughts. I was in London at a meeting where we were talking about net zero, and it's a series of there was a shadow minister that was coming from the Conservatives, and there was something else. And I raised the issue about how do we engage at parish and town council level, and it was astonishing the complete level of ignorance that exists in the centre about the existence of these particular entities. Mind you, Mayor Copper. I mean, before I settled into a community, I had no idea about them either. So I think one of the biggest issues is about education of the civil servant cohorts in London and ministers about the existence of parish and town councils. And I could almost see a pleading note going up saying, please don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
As I see these neighborhood groups or whatever, it's simply reinventing what already exists because people simply don't know we exist. And the other issue is one of the great collaboration talks we had about biodiversity, when we were discussing with the Somerset Unitary Authority. One of the things that was made very clear was that they are asking parish and town councils to do more and more. So as they become created, they are starting to try and delegate responsibilities down to parish and town councils, often for areas for which we have no statutory responsibility. So I think there's a right muddle about to happen when this legislation goes through. And as you pointed out very clearly in your presentation, the complete lack of incoherence and ignorance that is going through at the moment is somewhat concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Act, the 1972 Act, Section 101, which allows us to do anything that districts and counties can do, and obviously with their cooperation and permission, is not very well known and not well established. And so when Baroness Taylor says we no wish to change the powers of town and parish councils, actually we've already got, if we choose to use it, a power to help these other areas with those sorts of facilities. Obviously, there's still a capacity issue. We're going to take on toilets, public toilets, parking, markets, and so forth. How is that going to get managed? But I've actually got a fuller document about all of this, which is from which I've drawn this presentation. I'll add it to the chat in a minute so people can download it. David Newman, you've got things about pride and place to say, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Sue asked me to say a bit about it, so I'll just point out how it's parallel but different to what is in the bill.
Right.
First thing, the scale is all over the place. The first ones selected were whole towns. The most recent batch that came in the autumn are medium super output areas of about 7,000 people. And one of them happens to be within Blackbird Leys, which is why I started finding out about it. It isn't to do with economic growth. It's focused on what is usually thought of as redevelopment. So it's all the things that you talk about when you do a redevelopment project in an area. So health, housing, skills, places to enjoy, sports, environment, the whole lot. And the whole list supplied in the latest documents of things that you can do without needing to make a business case looks like a list of everything that's ever been tried in the country on redevelopment.
Right.
And in it, they recognise parish councillors are councillors, so they exclude all councillors, not just parish ones, from being the chair of a neighbourhood board. The heart of it is a neighbourhood board with actual powers to make decisions and spend government money. Basically, £2 million a year for 10 years.
Right.
In an area which is one of the 10% most deprived by government statistics in, I think it's England and Wales in this case.
Yeah.
There isn't a Scottish programme. And the aim, they explicitly say they want to be able to transition by year 3 to have the whole thing managed locally, but it starts off with a district or unitary council doing that, although a community organisation, which can include but doesn't have to be a parish council, can be at secretariat at the beginning and eventually take over. And the board, they've got a board which is meant to have maybe 8-10 people for the small ones, much bigger ones for ones that cover a whole district. And yes, they do say they want it to be full of community leaders, so not too many parish councillors, because the distinction between a community leader and a parish councillor.
Interesting.
But yes, they expect them to be on it. And the community leaders can be community organisations, but they can be something like a GP or school teacher, someone who's recognised locally. And they do even suggest having a competition to find the chair. The chair has now got to be local or locally connected. That's in part of clarification. And they suggest a competition to find the chair. One of our local councils said it was better to find the members by sortition, like in a citizens' assembly. But that doesn't seem to fit with the government. And they mention but don't say much about a wider forum beyond the board. But the board, once established and approved, will have powers, all the usual council powers, they list them. And the list of powers is that of any council, including parish council, to do with planning. And they suggest taking, often some of the ones our districts are reluctant to do, with particular licensing powers and so on. And they mention neighbourhood plans as part of that. And the neighbourhood board will eventually have powers to do, basically they produce plans once they're approved by the central government because it's their money. They say go ahead and do it. That's that one. And that is all what I told you we didn't know about until the paper came out just before Christmas, as it started off much vaguer than that.
Right.
Just like this bill seems to be starting off very vague.
Yes, that's my sense as well. And I think the idea that this actually came to us from a clerk in Cambridgeshire, that a neighbourhood plan, the neighbourhood plan as it currently exists, is a great foot on the ground that from town and parish councils, regardless of what else might be happening at a higher level. But at the same time, as you said, David, then there are these larger area plans which are being mooted. It's like government. I think we're just transparent to government. I don't think they're deliberately trying to sideline us, but I don't know. Alan, what's your view, mate?
Yeah, it fills in with what David's just been talking about in relation to this pride in place documentation, which I've read. And obviously I'm a councillor, so I've been excluded. And we've got an area of deprivation that's been awarded this money over 10 years. The issue also is actually it draws in the local MP direct onto this board as well as part and parcel of it. So the structure itself, like David points out, doesn't seem to be anything that has anything that people pull together until it's formed. And then when it's formed, it's got immense powers, which just doesn't make sense, because if they're not people that have been playing in this game before as councillors, you can have some rudimentary mistakes made. People are not going to be able to organise stuff without the local authority actually and holding them at the same time. So there's a lot of things that don't make sense in relation to this particular programme that the government is pushing on this particular agenda. And unfortunately, my concern is that the money that is going into this, which is very laudable, may be wasted. And that's my real concern about the Pride in Place programme.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Is it now launched? Is it live yet, this programme? You're muted, Alan.
Yes, there was a whole bunch of areas, large areas, approved in this last spring. Actually, a few of them even started under the previous Conservative government. And they are already at the stage of having neighbourhood boards approved and now submitting plans to government for their first year. The new ones that were listed in September, which came when lots of people pointed out that there are some really deprived areas, but inside quite a rich area. So they did an exercise to name the small ones. We have until a date in June to set up the neighbourhood boards. The plans for the project plans for first year have to go to government ministry by late November to then be approved for spending starting basically the following financial year. And in our area, I know that the local councillors who met when it first came out were incredibly confused by the lack of guidance. now this has come out, it's more or less the officers who've got to deal with it. And yes, the MP said yes, she wants us involved in that group. In fact, she was hoping to set up some meetings, including the parish councils, but we've actually set one up already on the 31st of January as part of our neighbourhood plan. So to a certain extent, the people in the district council are also puzzled by this.
There's a question in the chat, David. All these members of neighbourhood boards, so they're all volunteers, are they?
They're all volunteers.
Yeah.
The chair is meant to be unpaid, but unless they can't do it otherwise, then there can be expenses. However, the neighbourhood boards can employ people.
Right, okay.
So they can employ people directly, or they can pay another organisation to have staff to work on their behalf.
Okay.
Typically, so if you have a well-organised community association or something who already have staff, then the neighbourhood board could pay for them to do it. In fact, in the early stages, they say typically the district authority will have staff who act as a secretariat, but it could be a local organisation.
Okay. One of the issues from my own background is that there isn't a professional association for people that do community-based regeneration. And so if you wanted to try and find people to be paid to do stuff, it's not as easy as it might otherwise be. Interesting. I mean, the British Urban Regeneration Association, I don't think it had a big element of that, but it's folded anyway. Amy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for shouting out the report, and I'll put a link to the chat if it's not in there already. To the report in the chat. Yeah, no, it's just it's unfortunate to hear some of the kind of negative words that have been said to describe the situation. So I just noted down some of them, like ignorance, exclusion, deprivation, ignored, uncoordinated, and things like that. And I think there's a real opportunity to kind of think about things from a more positive and value-based approach as well. And so I think one of the things that I have been doing recently is trying to I was actually looking at the value of the voluntary community and social enterprise sector in terms of how is value understood and how is it measured, what are the kind of measurement frameworks to support different value types, and what are the things that are often ignored or sidelined, and also what's the shadow value of things that are not necessarily captured in the kind of data sets effectively. And so one of the things, obviously, as you know, as volunteers, your own personal well-being can sometimes be overshadowed, and the expectation to do more with less, and those kind of things. So I think by looking at kind of what value is being generated from a kind of quite comprehensive way, it can kind of draw attention to the importance of people in the middle of all of this, and I think rather than create these, I mean, as Dan said, neighbourhood forums in urban areas where there haven't been town and parish councils have been effective to kind of be a governance body, not necessarily the same as the town and parish council because they require 21 people, for instance in the context of the neighbourhood plan. But as Andrew said, there have been examples like Queen's Park where new community councils or parish councils have been created, and I think what could work really well is if rather than creating necessarily a new governance structure, is if you could kind of replicate what is already proven to work, the town and parish council model, and then co-opt into that voluntary groups and kind of those other groups, so that it becomes still part of government. You're not kind of dismantling the architecture of local democracy. So that's just kind of I wanted to say that I think there are ways to still achieve these goals of integrating neighbourhood level governance. It can still work within the existing architecture. It just needs to be made more visible, and it also needs to be better resourced. And for instance, one of the things I found very frustrating working on neighbourhood plans is that when you're working on a neighbourhood plan, the policy has to be about plan making and related to plan making, but there's all these action points that have to kind of almost be appended, which are absolutely central to the community ambition for neighbourhood plans. And that is actually, in a way, one of the most fundamental priorities for the community. And so that needs to be resourced in a much more innovative, creative way. The neighbourhood has been, dismantled from the way that it previously was. So it's an opportunity to think about community wealth building. It's an opportunity to think about participation from a kind of, what already works, and kind of thinking about what is the actual value that is created for the people who live and breathe community. And not everybody's going to step up to the plate to kind of fill the gap. And if it is, it might just be other people wearing multiple hats, as it often is, working in communities. And also, there's a real risk, and it needs safeguards to make sure that these new spaces don't get politicised or kind of, captured by interests that may not always have the community, at heart. So that's just what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I mean, there's a certain amount of stuff in the way town parish councils operate now that doesn't exclude political influence, but it does tend to negate the potential for, a Donald Trump kind of takeover by somebody. I think what we're beginning to say collectively, and shout out if I'm wrong, is that we know what, we've got an idea of what may be coming at us. We know what we can already do effectively. That it seems to me there needs to be a new appraisal of what actually parish councils may do and what are the realities of it doing in these new situations. And that's a piece of work which doesn't seem to have been done yet. And then there's this issue about capacity building. There's this issue a little bit about resources. One way forward for parishes, which we're saying to people, is that you can cluster together to do stuff, so you don't have to pay for it all yourself. And there's some good examples of that around. And you can actually merge with your neighbouring parish or parishes to create a bigger organisation, sharing councillors, sharing resources, and being more effective in that way. And there's a lot of places around the country that are looking at that, including a place called Caterham in Surrey, where I went to school. They're looking at combining their two parish councils. So I think at the local level, on the one hand, we may develop, with the help of NALC and SLCC and other people, an idea of what the new world for parish councils might be. But then we have to, as I think you're alluding to, Amy, not everybody's going to jump at it straight away. There has to be a process of thinking about it, and some councils will not want to come involved. Some councils will need to merge with other councils to achieve it, and so forth. It's actually quite a big thing. But if we're not careful, and again, bearing in mind what Alan was saying, that if we don't have some time spent on this, there's a danger when decisions are being made by people somewhat more randomly and finances get wasted and so forth. So it strikes me that there are some of the things that we've been saying today that needs to be pulled together, and there needs to be a debate within the sector about how this goes forward in terms of what we think can be done and how we want it to be done. But we know we're not going to get more money from government to do it, so we have to think about resources as well as joint working. So, I mean, that's my take from today. Alan, you've got your hand up, mate.
Yeah, if I could just add in relation to the Pride in Place, I'm 100% behind the idea in relation to the well-being input that's going to take place with this. It's the materialization of that. That's my real concern, that this will not actually materialize unless these people actually gel to pull it in the right direction.
Right.
And it would be an exercise in futility otherwise. That's my real concern. And the localities in which this money is being spent, invariably the people that are involved in that area have very little local groups other than parent groups for the children going to school, and very few other types of social grouping. And that's the real concern for me, that this will be wasted rather than actually come to something really useful for them.
Yeah. And it's great to have people, academics like Amy, able to put some time into thinking around this as well. I think we do need to put together something that makes sense, and then see about how we can get that established in the government and civil service things. David, you've got another hand up again, and then it's Sue. David first.
Yeah, I don't have that worry where I am. There
Which
are
one? Which worry?
about the one just mentioned. We actually have lots of active community projects and community groups. Only half as many as we used to, but there's still a lot. So, and we're in Oxford, so there's plenty of expertise, even
Right.
in this corner of Oxford. So I don't see that as a problem. I would be more worried about lack of structure or models on how to get going
Right.
in,
Yeah.
and that is maybe models of, are there things from grassroots regeneration that we should all be learning and looking at, and all the people being taught right at the beginning?
Right. I published a book on this in 2017, but the publishers have put the price up to something ridiculous now, so I can't encourage you necessarily to buy it. But you're absolutely right. People need a pathway to follow, don't they? Sue Burton.
Yeah, hello, thank you. So it's very sort of fragmented comments that are little bits of what we've heard today. I totally agree that there's a lack of knowledge about what town and parish councils do, but of course it's not surprising when you've got a little parish with a clerk and very part-time clerk and a few councillors, and they meet every 2 or 3 months. And then you've got another parish, which is Bexhill is near me, and that's 45,000 people, and that's another town, that's a town council, but it's basically fundamentally the same. So I do think that it's not surprising this difference of size, and what they actually do varies so much that there is a bit of a muddle on that, and we maybe need to try and think around how we can get around that and come over as, professional, knowledgeable link with the community, the grassroots stuff that we actually do. My particular parish, 7,000, we've got a neighbourhood plan, which we've had for some time. We have quite a lot of estate, so that there's quite a lot of work going on within the parish. And it's about what we can offer is certainly taking over other services if they're given to us. And two, we are the contact with the community, because even though you've got the neighbourhood area committee, that's 30,000 people. How are we going to get the feedback of what our residents feel about things? Because it's for them. It isn't done to, it's got to be done with. And if we don't ask them, and the parish and the town council is the way of asking and getting their input. So I think we've got to do a lot of work on publicity and talking and talking moving forward. It feels like a right old muddle personally. You've got the unitary doing one thing, and then there some areas have got the neighbourhood board, some haven't. It doesn't feel like we're in a good place. I don't know who we talk to try and make our role, which I'm sure could be significant and very valuable, how we can get that on the pieces of paper that say what's going to happen.
Thank you so much for that, Sue. And I think having a plan or a structure or potential structure that reflects that some parishes are quite small and some aren't, that needs to be in there somewhere, doesn't it? My own conviction is that there needs to be such a document. There needs to be something that we say this is where we think it should best work, and so that then we've all got something we can get behind and saying, right, now this is the answer. Surely, a bit of work from now to decide exactly what that contains, and I'll certainly speak back to NALC and SLCC after this meeting about that. But then I think then there needs to be a process. And my sense is that there's a lot of people out there that need to be persuaded about this. It's not just politicians. It's not just civil servants. It's a whole bunch of people. I did meet a civil servant, a junior civil servant at the SLC conference, and asked them, who do we speak to about this stuff? And he said, oh, give me an email, I'll let you know. I emailed him, of course, I've never heard back. I think Sir Humphrey must have sat on him. Yeah. Alex?
I just sort of thinking as well, in Hertfordshire, where they've started, where the places where they're boroughs and they've got no town and parish councils, have started to consult with residents and say, do you want a parish council? And the residents are saying no because they don't want to pay extra tax. So, but it sounds like when you were talking at the beginning of the meeting that there's another way of doing it, which is a petition. I don't know how big that petition has to be, but it sounds like the sector needs to know that there's two ways of doing it, or the government should be encouraged to just create these councils without consulting people, because I mean that doesn't sound very democratic, but I mean those of us who are in town and parish councils really appreciate having them. It's when it's centres around a matter of tax that it becomes difficult.
Yeah, there is a procedure. I've got it in the document I've put in the chat. Draft discussion document, there's a link to the relevant legislation that supports it. I think beyond a certain level of people interested, the district council has to take it on board and do something about it. I think there's a level above which there has to be a response. It doesn't mean that they can't have a response below that level. But I've not been personally in touch with anybody who's actually done this, so I'm only working from the paperwork here. But it is happening. Lots of places are doing it, and places are thinking about merging. On the whole, we have all the powers we might need, but I think the point is about the structure and how they actually might operate in practice. Yeah, good. Well, we've had a good old chew at this, ladies and gentlemen, which I'm delighted about. Anybody's got any thoughts after this meeting, and certainly send it through to myself or through to Graham. I put that draft document in the chat for people to download and have a shifty. In terms of where we go from here, I've said I would speak to NALC and SLCC about this, but somebody needs to write this stuff up. Somebody needs to do the work of writing this, putting some thought into it, and then it gets chewed over by the rest of us, and then we decide if that's what we want to be doing. I'd love to volunteer, but I think there has to be an agreed person that does it. That's my perception. Anybody got any other thoughts about how we might proceed with pulling some of these threads together into a structure?
I can potentially help because I want to. Well, I'm working on this topic anyway, so I've got a few bits of ongoing research about this area. So if I kind of write something up in my perspective and then add it to the mix, but I don't know if it will suit.
Well, that'd be brilliant. Thank you very much.
Parish Council, but yeah.
Yeah, you and I talked a little bit about this in advance. Yeah. My perception again is that if we can get something that's fully chewed over, that makes sense in all these different levels, and that NALC and SLCC can both adopt, and then we're cooking with gas. That's my perception. Joy. Well, it's not dull, is it? Harriet, you've got your hand up.
I think my perception is that we need to make an awful lot of noise.
Yes.
Because the louder you talk, I mean, you just look at the single issue fanatic groups and how they manage to collar and co-opt the media. And actually with town and parish councils up and down the country, who I know that there are problems. I know that there are, I mean, I was horrified to read in the chat about the one that's been taken over by a car fanatic and has a racist chairman. But at least you can get rid of us. You know, we do come up for election. And one of the things that I worry about terribly is what seems to me an increasing deficit of democracy.
Right.
I mean, I worry about it in charities, I worry about it in special, community interest groups and everything, where things are started by well-meaning and really good people. And they don't think about succession and they don't think about who's going to take over, and everything just dies when they lose interest or whatever. So it's town and parish councils which keep the country going. And unless we can make that important, an incredibly vital community contribution to the government, local government, I think that's really sad. And I just don't think that politicians and people who have no idea what goes on in the rest of the country and have had no external experience out of the public sector, perhaps, and that seems to apply to an awful lot of people in government and both governments, any government. You need that extra input from people who care about where they live and who know what's needed in where they live and who don't have a political axe to grind. They're just working for the benefit of their communities. And I just think that until all us, a silent majority, get together and get our voices heard, we're not going to win. We're just going to be rolled over by people who've got spreadsheets and no real sense of how things work.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Sorry, no, I agree. No, the point I mean, I think all I know about campaigning is if you're going to campaign, you're going to go in hard from the outset. So I mean, personally prepared to write to every MP in the land if we've got the right story to send to them. Yeah, you're right. We're looking at a potential campaign, aren't we, to get people to understand some things which they don't seem to, but also to have solutions that fit in with their concerns as well. So that, I'm sure it can be done. David Morgan-Jones.
Oh, it's about the previous thing with Amy. If you want another pair of eyes to look at whatever's going to be written, I'm very happy to spend a bit of time. It's not an area I know a huge amount about, but I'm quite happy to learn.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that that we need to get some stuff together, which then we all have a chew at and comment on. Your comment, David, a couple about should NALC be leading on this. NALC is heavily engaged in this. I work personally. I work 5 hours a week for SLCC as a environmental and sustainability advisor, and I work with NALC more as a volunteer. But I have got a very close connection with Chris Moore, the policy manager there. I think the thing is about NALC certainly needs to be engaged in this process big time, and if we can get something that we collectively as a sector think makes sense, and that NALC is happy to then take point on working on this with government, and that's also fine. So we will see how we get go forward with that. I know NALC are busy. They've said they're busy lobbying members of the House of Lords about the bill at the moment in this current committee stage. Part of that is about putting in things that they already require for town and parish councils, like, for example, hybrid meetings. But I'm not aware that that NALC have got a book of words that we've been talking about, which explains in practice how these things might work, what happens at town and parish council level, how that's supported, how that fits, and whether if there are neighbourhood areas committees, how they operate as well. Yes, there's going to be regulations coming out from government in due course about these committees, but I again feel the sooner we can get our ideas together and get them in there early, the better. I think there is a certain amount of urgency about this. Transition towns. Transition towns do vary. Some of them are very effective as local groups looking for the future of their places, and some of them tend to be a bit more like talking shops. But I think they are another existing type of organisation that can be engaged in terms of parish councils working with their local groups and volunteer groups. Transition towns are certainly one of those. Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel we've had a great hearing and a great discussion, and I think we've got a certain amount of consensus, but there now needs to be a certain amount of work. So I will feed back to both NALC and SLCC what we've talked about today. And Amy volunteered to get engaged, and Graham has just put his hand in the air, and so has David. So all of a sudden we've got a little working group before we know where we are, which is brilliant. And you've just been photobombed. There's a cat just walked across your screen. There you go. Andrew,
I
just
think
be
actually the cat,
photobombed by your cat again.
the cat was actually volunteering, Andrew.
Oh, is that all right? So we have the cat as well. So right. So we've got the core of a group to get forward. So what I could say to NALC and SLCC, yep, we think there's some work to be done here, and we have some people prepared to get some work, put some words on paper about this. What do you reckon? So if we're happy to say that, I'm certainly happy to say that. And it is an opportunity, it seems to me, particularly if this bill is going to become law by Easter. People are probably trying to draft these regulations for neighbourhood area committees already, and there are pilots going around there. So I think the sooner we get our oar in, the better. Absolutely. Great.
Well, let me just say a public thank you, Andrew, for putting together this presentation. It was clearly urgently needed, and clearly It's gone down very well. So thank you very much. And for anyone who wants to know about next week, we are going to have another Linda Aspe session. And those of you who've been to Linda's session before will know they are very powerful and very moving, and I recommend you all give us a try. So thank you for your trouble.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harriet, for your offer as well. Great.
I know on a bit of a personal note, I've just had an email from my son's school saying that he's going to go and read his poem at the Houses of Parliament. So it's quite exciting. Maybe he can make it one about devolution.
While he's there, yeah. Yes, my mother says, pay attention.
Here's a poem that I wrote. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great news. We're winning. We're getting there. We will get there. Thank you again, David, for your points as well, because there are some things that need to be pulled together here. Harriet, you probably know Graham, do you, from meetings and stuff like that?
Oh, yes.
Well, I hope you two play nice together, but we'll say no more about it.
We do play very nicely together, thank you. But I think we both feel as well. Graham's got the experience and the knowledge and the capacity to put words down in glowing terms. I just basically follow along behind him, going quack, quack, quack.
Well, you've got the passion, Harriet, haven't you?
Yeah, I mind. I really mind.
Exactly. That's vital. Oh, and there's Andrew from Martok, where my grandparents lived for a long time, and I haven't been in Martok for a long time, so it's my fault, not yours. But there you go.
They've just sold the church.
Yeah.
What, the URC church?
Yes. Or it's on sale at the moment. It's very sad.
It is sad, yeah. The last I heard that there was actually a minister there again. This is
it's very recent.
Suburb of Martok called Bower Hinton, and my grandfather was minister there twice, actually, in the 40s and 50s. He was there in the war. Yeah, it is sad. Yeah. The last time we went there a few years back, I think it was my grandmother's memorial service. Her three sons went round the back of the church to find out where they could still find where the old air raid shelter used to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's obviously a hole in the ground at the back of church there. And I think that's my earliest memory of being taken by I was brought up in the West Indies. We were picked up by my father and taken to show a water barrel with ice on the top. And I remember that very clearly. Possibly my earliest ever memory was Martok. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Well,
right. Yeah.
Sad. Yeah. Well, I know they had ups and downs with having ministers. Like many churches, of course, difficult to find a minister of religion. It's been a shortage generally. We're just getting a new vicar in our village in Mitcherdine, so I've got a candidate. Not me. Okay. Thank you for that, Andrew. Yeah. I haven't been down for a while. I should cut back. We used to go up to the Montemute. We couldn't say monument when we were little. Up above, we used to love rolling sideways down the hillsides there. Yeah, the Montemute. There you go. Great stuff. Well, we've got a plan. We've got an idea. We've got a way forward. We know what we're going to be doing. So I think that's a great outcome from today's session. Brilliant.
Thank you all very much.
Cheers, Graham.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.